Welcome, everyone. My name is Jack Purdy. I am the Director of Sales here at Messari, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about why crypto needs better community relations. So to kick off, going to do a brief little history of investor relations in the traditional finance world, and then get into the current state of crypto community relations. And so intentionally using a broader term there because in decentralized networks, there's a broader set of stakeholders, right? Outside just investors, you have developers, users, so on and so forth. And then lastly, my colleague Ken is going to come on and talk about how we can 10x what community relations look like, taking a lot of learnings from the TradFi world and then marrying that with a lot of the unique capabilities of what we can do here in crypto. So to kick things off, I want you to imagine you are an investment analyst a half century ago looking for alpha, right? Something we're all accustomed to. And back in the day, right, if you are looking to get information on a company you want to invest in, what there was, you had annual reports, so similar to what we know today, that would come out once a year, which is all well and good, but right, we're in October right now, and so if we are looking to analyze a company, that information is clearly a bit stale. So companies would have voluntary disclosures in these interim periods, but there was no standardization, right? And you actually had to have direct contacts at these companies to get that, or like through a brokerage themselves. So why was this problematic? Well, you think about if you're an investor, if you don't have sufficient data, then the probability of making a bad investment is higher, right? On the flip side, if you're a company, it actually becomes harder to raise money because garnering that investor trust becomes more difficult because in order to underwrite that risk, they're going to require a higher rate of return. And then if you're a retail investor, you're more or less like entirely excluded, right? You don't have these contacts. You're not able to get, any of the more, accurate, up-to-date information. So picking stocks is more or less throwing a dart at a dartboard, right? Like, I like the taste of Coke, so I'm going to buy their equity. And lastly, this meant there was much higher rates of fraud because if you allow companies to operate in the shadows, then shadowy things will occur. So back before the SEC was led by an evil tyrant hell-bent on stifling innovation, they were actually doing some good for the world. And so they introduced what's known as the 10Q, also known as a quarterly report, which, again, looked very similar to the annual, but now happening 4 times as frequently. And what these include is, a general business overview of like what the company does, what are the products and services provided, how has that changed over the prior 3 months, and then looking at the different like risk factors, right? So any idiosyncratic risk of the company themselves, broader industry risks, from technological disruption or general market trends, as well as what's known as MD&A, management discussion and analysis, where the team themselves can actually provide context as to all like the financial statements, right? So cash flow statement, balance sheet, income statement, and so on and so forth. So why does this matter? So better reporting actually helps stimulate economic growth. And so by having better access to data, investors are able to better allocate capital. And then companies are actually able to get a lower cost of equity as a result. There's actually a lot of academic research kind of showing how the higher fidelity and more frequent reporting actually enables this. And so if more companies are able to kind of access this capital to fuel growth, right, in turn, that stimulates economic activity, clearly a desirable result. So now porting this over to crypto, you might be thinking, why the hell do we need quarterly reports, right? Like blockchains are open source. We have access to all this data, right? A simple analogy would be, in TradFi world, if you're looking to, look at JP Morgan's equity, that's kind of a black box until they release their quarterly report. But in crypto, right, if we're looking at Aave, like every single transaction lives on chain. So anytime there's a loan originated, like in theory, you can see this, right? At all times, you can see, the exact collateral backing every single loan. You can see the interest rate, revenue, all these things. But the reality is it's a lot harder than that, right? Anyone that's looked at data on chain, it's messy. To actually get the metadata necessary to do financial analysis, right, you have to ingest a lot of data from a node itself. You have to kind of decode it into tables that make sense to then be able to get these kind of higher order metrics that matter. So this is something we spent a lot of time thinking about at Messari. We kind of do this type of financial reporting for about 100 top protocols in the space. So here's an example for Solana, where you can kind of see a general framework for how we think about it. And again, this isn't just as part of like investor relations, but like community relations. So we try to think of any relevant like KPI fundamental metric that a potential stakeholder would care about to make an actionable decision, right? Whether to invest in the protocol, whether to deploy, whether to allocate capital on chain, right? So we'd be looking at like transaction fees, the revenue associated from that. I'd want to look at the general like decentralization, looking at like the number of validators, where this activity is coming from. Is it DeFi versus NFTs? Are there specific applications? How much fundraising is coming into this network? And so the numbers are all well and good, but you also need context. It's helpful to have a subject matter expert actually like come in and say, the numbers are moving, but like here's why, right? There's a lot of things going behind the scenes or that like a general observer might not know. And so being able to have these long form reports to tell a story behind this. And so we've taken, again, a lot from the 10Q format, but now doing it in like a more crypto native format where we can kind of look at, again, a general primer behind what the protocol does, understanding the general kind of token economics, tech stack, as well as, piecing together ecosystem analysis, and then, really pouring through the network data, looking at, again, transactions, fees, so on and so forth. So that's great. But again, we're not only going to have quarterly reports. The demand for real-time data in crypto is as insatiable as this adorable, perpetually slippery baby hippo, Mudeng. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Ken.
Good day, everyone. My name is Ken Yip, and I'm Director of Product at Messari. And today I'll be talking to you around how we're going to 10x crypto community relations. So the 10Qs provided a great standardized reporting for traditional companies, which were very transparent, and the solution was okay, but the frameworks and methods of yesterday won't work for the needs of tomorrow. In crypto's case, the needs are very different because crypto moves really, really fast. A quarter can feel like an eternity in crypto, and the narratives and data can change significantly in the span of weeks or even days. So there's a need to marry this standardized, transparent reporting approach with the fast-paced nature of crypto. And that's not the only difference. It's not just the fast-paced nature, it's the fact that the stakeholders and personas in the entire community are very different. Yes, investors are important, but they are just one persona in the community of many. You have developers trying to understand what to build next and what others are building in their ecosystem. You have business development trying to understand what opportunities there are that they can capitalize on, and so forth. We've spoken to hundreds of these different users across investors, builders, marketing teams, you name it. And although they all have different roles, they all have common problems. The three common problems are as follows. The first one is data fragmentation. The data is everywhere. If you are trying to onboard into any ecosystem or community, you will often be given 10 or more different links and told to look at it yourself. Do your own research. The second problem is that even after you've been given these different links, it takes a long time to digest all of that information and draw insights from it so that they're actionable and useful. And then the third problem is that all of these users and personas are very time poor. Their full-time job is not to gather the data and contextualize it. Their job is to make better investment decisions, to build the right thing, to close deals. And when you combine all of those three problems together, it creates a less than ideal situation for anyone in the community. So the questions we should be asking ourselves are, how do we set up the entire community for success? And what does the perfect solution look like? Well, ideally, the perfect solution would have everything in one place. It would include event-driven data, qualitative data, quantitative data. It would also contextualize all of that data for you to explain the why and what it means. And it would summarize it for you in a few words and sentences. In addition to that, it should be open and publicly accessible to anyone in the entire community so that you do not need an account, you do not need a subscription, you can just hit a URL and gain access to all of that great information in one place. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Why don't we dive deeper into what some of these data sets look like? So on the event-driven side, ideally it would have real-time monitoring of all events that happen both on-chain and off-chain. It would track the entire lifecycle of the event so that you don't need to go to multiple different sources. You don't need to go to Twitter/crypto, Twitter. You don't need to go to Discord or Telegram. It will track it all in one place for you. In addition to that, it would have the entire lifecycle from start to finish. So in the case of a hacker attack, it would tell you exactly when it happened. It will then tell you as the team is announcing and doing updates to it, all the way up until the exploit has been resolved. In addition to that, it will support token unlock data so that you can understand the allocation of tokens across all of the different categories of investors, founding teams, ecosystem grants, as well as liquidity incentives. It would tell you the vesting schedules and unlock events so that you would understand exactly when the circulated supply of a given asset is going to change drastically, and you can plan accordingly. On the qualitative data side, ideally it would ingest news, video, podcasts from hundreds of different sources. And not only that, it would summarize the content for you so that you can understand a lengthy news article in moments or a 30-minute video in 30 seconds. It would also round it off with lots of quantitative data. On the fundraising side, it would tell you who has invested in Solana as a project, how many funding rounds were there, what are their valuations. It would not only tell you that, but it would also tell you investments made by the Solana ecosystem. Who are the portfolio holdings of Solana Labs and Solana Foundation? When do they invest in those companies? On the market data side, it will not only tell you the price, market cap, and trading volume of Solana the asset, but would also share all of that information for any assets within the Solana ecosystem. In addition to that, it would support on-chain data. It would provide you with the network metrics so that you can understand network growth and activity on Solana, including transaction fees, active addresses, DeFi TVL, DEX trading volume, active contracts, and contracts being deployed. All of that information would be available in time series so that you can understand and analyze trends over time easily, as well as broken down into traditional statement formats so that you can compare growth and change on a quarterly basis and do the apples-to-apples comparison. Now, that was a lot of information, but what does it mean? Ideally, all of that information will be contextualized for you because it's not enough to just be given some numbers and shown that they're going up or down. It would go into deep dives into your entire ecosystem, into key projects, segmenting them through different categories so that you understand the biggest players in the space. It would not only give you the data visualizations broken down in easy-to-digest formats, it would actually explain the why behind them. Why do the numbers go up or down? What are the trends to look out for? What are the short and long-term implications? But it wouldn't just contextualize it for individuals in your community. It would also provide contextualization and distribution to traditional finance players. Ideally, the solution would make sure that your crypto project is in the eyes of the decision makers behind these large institutions, enterprises, and digital asset desks. And they would be viewable directly in the platforms that they use, such as a Bloomberg terminal. That was still quite a lot of information. So the perfect solution would summarize all of that for you over different time periods. Whether you are trying to capture something from last week, or maybe you've taken a short break and you're looking to jump in over a 30-day time period, or maybe it's your first time stepping your foot into the Solana ecosystem, you can leverage a 90-day recap. Ultimately, the summarizations will work for you so that you can get the full picture and stay up to date in seconds. Well, good news. The perfect solution is here, and it's Messari's new community center. Our community center combines event-driven and alerting data with qualitative data and quantitative data all in one place. It contextualizes it for you through our seasoned team of crypto analysts, and it summarizes it for you in a few words and sentences using AI. The community center is open and publicly available to anyone in your community. You do not need an account. You do not need a subscription. You just hit a URL, and you have everything that I just mentioned at your fingertips. Why is that so important, though? What makes it different? Well, a lot of products in the marketplace today, commonly known as data dashboards, they'll give you a partial picture. They might give you some on-chain metrics, such as transaction fees being generated, active addresses, and so forth, and they're typically publicly available. But that's it. That's all they do. They don't give you the 360 view. They don't give you event-driven data. They don't give you qualitative data to round off the 360 understanding. And they don't contextualize it for you. Yes, they might give you a pretty-looking chart, but what does that number mean? What do the trends going up and down mean? How do you actually take that into something actionable and insightful for you to do something on? And it doesn't summarize it for you, so it makes you do all of the legwork. Whereas something like the Community Center, it does all of that for you that I just mentioned a moment ago. And in terms of the actual impact to any community and ecosystem, it means that every single player in your community is far greater enabled compared to something like just a data dashboard. What used to take multiple weeks to enable some form of enablement because you need a minimum level of knowledge, signal, and insights to do any role and participate can now be done in minutes. And it's not just the one-off onboarding cost into these ecosystems. There's an ongoing maintenance cost. You need to make sure that you stay up to date because crypto is really, really fast. And now, because you can reach that level of enablement in minutes, you can stay there. Happy days. And I talked a lot about the existing community of investors, builders, business development teams, and so forth. But the Community Center helps so much more than that. It helps everyone on the outskirts of your community, those who are community curious. These are your potential investors, your potential builders, your potential opportunities. It sets everyone up for success, whether they're in your current ecosystem or on the outskirts. Put simply, ecosystems without a community center don't have the tools that they need to be set up for success, whereas ecosystems with a community center are far more greatly enabled and significantly stronger. So to recap, we've had hundreds of conversations with builders, investors, marketing teams, business development teams in the crypto ecosystem, and they all have the same problems around data fragmentation, the need for contextualization, and they're all very, very time poor. We've asked ourselves, how do we set up these communities for success, and what does the perfect solution look like? And we built it. In the same way that 10Qs and quarterly reports enabled better economic growth in traditional companies, we can enable better economic growth in crypto by allowing investors to make better decisions, developers to focus on building the right thing, and for business development teams to spot the right opportunities and capitalize on them. The days of data fragmentation are over. Whether you're a builder, end user, investor, anyone, this is a one-stop shop solution for you that enables you regardless of your role. Messari's Community Center provides real-time and multifaceted data across events and alerts, qualitative data, and quantitative data. It contextualizes it so you can understand the why, and it summarizes it for you so that you can understand the why in seconds. It's publicly accessible to anyone in your community. You do not need an account. You do not need a subscription. You just hit a URL, and you have everything available to you. It's so much more than just a data dashboard. It's critical infrastructure for your entire community so that they can spend more time on what matters. Ultimately, it means that it accelerates the growth of your community and enables everyone to 10x their output. And with that, I'm delighted to announce the launch of Messari's Community Center, first coming to the Solana community in November, followed by the Avalanche community in December, and many of the crypto projects in the future. This is the future of community relations. Thank you.